Last night, I dreamed of drowning in a dark lake. Today, my patient sat down and whispered, "How did you escape the water?" I have spent years trying to train myself out of fear. Psychiatry demands it. We're supposed to meet the darkest corners of the human mind with calm, steady hands. But that morning, as I stepped into my office, I felt a chill that no clinical training could shake. It began with a dream. It had been unlike any nightmare I'd experienced before. The lake was endless, black, stretching wider than the sky itself. No moon, no stars, just water, swallowing everything. I remember thrashing, my arms heavy, lungs burning. A voice echoed beneath the surface, not above it. "Stay with us." I woke gasping, drenched in sweat, convinced for a moment that I had really drowned. I chalked it up to stress. Too many long shifts, too many patients carrying unbearable grief. My job was bleeding into my subconscious. That's what I told myself as I straightened my tie and waited for the day's first appointment. He entered quietly, almost drifting into the room. A man in his early 40s, thin, his hair unkempt as if sleep had abandoned him. His eyes carried the hollowed-out look I've seen in veterans, in survivors of abuse, in those who've stared too long into an abyss no one else can see. He didn't sit immediately. He lingered by the door, scanning my office like he was searching for an exit. "Take a seat," I said gently, gesturing to the couch. He lowered himself slowly, his hands trembling in his lap. For a while, he said nothing. I prepared myself for the silence. Sometimes the first sessions are like that. But then he leaned forward, and the first words he spoke drained the blood from my body. "How did you escape the water?" I froze. My pen slipped from my fingers and clattered to the floor. I tried to maintain composure, but my pulse hammered in my ears. "Excuse me?" I asked. My voice was thinner than I intended. "The lake," he whispered. His lips trembled as if the words hurt to speak. "It was endless and dark. I saw you there, thrashing." His eyes locked onto mine, unblinking. "I thought you were gone, but somehow you came back." For a moment I couldn't breathe. The dream, the drowning, the suffocating blackness, it was mine. I had told no one. Yet here was a man I had never met, describing it as if he had been inside my head only hours earlier. I leaned back, trying to re-establish professional distance, but my hands felt clammy against the leather chair. "Can you tell me more about this lake?" His voice dropped lower, almost conspiratorial. "It's not a dream, doctor. It's an invitation." The clock on the wall ticked loudly in the silence that followed. For the first time in my career, I felt like the patient and I had traded places, and I wasn't sure I wanted to know what would come next. I tried to collect myself, forcing my clinical instincts to rise above the icy panic creeping up my spine. Patients often mirror their doctor's energy, so if I appeared unsettled, it would only deepen his disturbance. Still, his words cut deeper than any delusion I'd ever heard. "An invitation?" I asked carefully, my voice steadying. He nodded slowly, as if confirming something I should have already known. "The water calls us. It waits until you're weak, until you think you're safe in your bed. Then it pulls you under. Some never wake up." His eyes darted toward the window. Outside, the sky was a dull gray, but he stared at it like he saw that endless black surface stretching beyond the glass. "What do you mean? Some never wake up?" He swallowed hard. "I've seen them. The ones who don't return. They float just beneath the surface, their mouths open, as if they're still trying to scream." He shuddered. "Last night I saw you too. You were almost gone." The room felt smaller, the air heavier. I tried to tell myself this was coincidence, his mind weaving a nightmare that happened to overlap with mine. But the details, the choking darkness, the sensation of drowning, the voice beneath the water, these weren't vague resemblances. They were exact. I scribbled something on my notepad just to ground myself. Hallucination, projection, shared archetype. But the pen shook between my fingers. Do you know why you dream of this lake? I asked. His lips curled into something that wasn't quite a smile. Because you do, Doctor. My heart lurched. What makes you think that? He leaned forward, his voice dropping into a rasp. Because I can't see it without you there. You're always in it first, struggling, drowning, every time. The fluorescent light above us flickered. For a split second, the shadows in the corners of the room seemed to ripple like disturbed water. I blinked, convincing myself it was fatigue, nothing more. Do you know when these dreams started? I asked, grasping for the clinical thread again. 2 weeks ago, he said. His gaze pinned me. And you? The truth clenched my throat. 2 weeks ago, the same night I first dreamed of the lake. The memory surged back, the terror of cold water swallowing me whole. I had dismissed it then, but now... I forced myself to answer with silence, jotting notes instead of words. He watched me with unnerving calm, as if he already knew. Finally, he whispered, the water doesn't just show dreams, Doctor. It shows futures. Something about the way he said futures made my skin prickle, as if the word itself carried weight far beyond ordinary language. Before I could press further, the timer on my desk chimed session's end. The sound startled me more than it should have, like being yanked out of a current. He stood slowly, his movements deliberate. At the door, he paused. Tonight, it will be worse, he said. Be ready to drown again. Then he left me alone in the office, with the faint echo of water still roaring in my ears. That evening, I lingered at my desk long after the other staff had gone home. Patient files lay open before me, but the words blurred on the page. My mind kept circling back to his parting words. Tonight, it will be worse. I told myself it was a classic case of suggestion. He planted an idea, and my anxious mind would water it until it grew into a nightmare. Nothing supernatural, nothing unexplainable, just psychology. Still, the logic felt paper-thin against the dread clawing inside me. By the time I finally drove home, night had already spread its wings. My house, usually a place of quiet relief, seemed unusually still. Even the hum of the refrigerator and the ticking of the wall clock seemed subdued, as though the air itself was holding its breath. I forced a routine: dinner, shower, notes for tomorrow's cases. But when I set my pen down, I noticed my handwriting shaking across the page. The words I had written intended as observations read like warnings: lake, invitation, drowning, tomorrow. I left the lamp on when I lay in bed, as though the thin shield of light could keep the darkness at bay. My body was exhausted, but my mind resisted sleep. Every time my eyelids fluttered shut, I saw ripples on black water. Eventually, fatigue dragged me under. The dream began the same way: silence, then the cold grip of water around my ankles. I was standing on nothing, the lake stretching endless in every direction. My reflection on the surface was wrong, its mouth opened before mine, mouthing words I couldn't hear. Then, as promised, it grew worse. Shapes floated beneath me, pale and distorted. Dozens of them, faces slack, eyes open. They drifted just out of reach, their limbs moving as if pulled by unseen currents. My pulse thrashed in my ears, echoing the rhythm of waves. Suddenly, one of them surged upward. I recognized the hollow eyes immediately. It was my patient. His hand burst through the surface, gripping my wrist with icy strength. "You shouldn't have come back," he hissed. His voice was the same rasp he used in my office, but here it carried the resonance of something far older, as if the lake itself spoke through him. I tore my hand free, choking as water rose to my chest. The more I struggled, the higher it climbed. My lungs screamed. The faces below began to rise, one by one, circling me like predators. Their mouths opened in unison, releasing a chorus of bubbles that sounded eerily like laughter. Just before the water swallowed my head, I woke with a violent gasp, clawing at my sheets as though they were waves pulling me down. My chest burned, my throat raw. The clock read 3:07 a.m. My lamp was still on, but the floor beside my bed was wet. A dark puddle stretched toward the door, glistening under the light, as if someone had dragged lake water into my room. And faintly, beneath the hum of electricity, I could hear it, the sound of water dripping. I sat frozen on the edge of my bed, staring at the puddle that shouldn't have been there. My first instinct was denial. Maybe the roof leaked. Maybe I'd spilled something. Maybe anything but what it appeared to be. But as I touched the floor, the water was icy, too cold to have come from any ordinary source. It clung to my skin, the chill burrowing deep into my bones. I grabbed a towel, trying to blot it away, but the dampness seemed endless. Every press only drew more moisture to the surface, as though the wood itself was sweating. Finally, I stopped, heart pounding. Somewhere in the house, a single drip echoed, then another, steady, relentless. I forced myself to move. Checking the kitchen, the bathroom, nothing. Dry. Pipes silent. But when I returned to my bedroom, the puddle was wider, reaching the foot of the bed. My throat tightened as the air grew heavy, humid, like the moments before a storm. I barely slept the rest of the night. The next morning at the hospital, I told myself I wouldn't mention it to him. That would mean admitting some part of me believed it. But when my patient walked in, his eyes locked on mine with unnerving certainty. "You saw it, didn't you?" he asked, before even sitting down. I swallowed. "What do you mean?" "The water. It followed you home." His lips curled into that almost smile again. "It always does, once you've been chosen." My professional mask cracked. Chosen for what? He leaned forward, lowering his voice as if the walls themselves might be listening. "The lake doesn't just take. It keeps. Every time you return, more of you stays behind. One day, there won't be enough left to wake up." I gripped my pen tightly, writing notes I didn't mean to write. Shared dream phenomena? Sleep paralysis? Early psychosis? But each word felt hollow. He continued calmly. "Do you remember their faces? The ones beneath you? They're not strangers, doctor. They're yours. Versions of you that drowned before you could escape. You've been there many times." A shiver traced my spine. My dream had been filled with those pale shapes circling beneath me, but I hadn't recognized them. Now, replaying the memory, I wasn't sure. Their jaws, their hair, their frames, they could have been mine. "You think this is real?" I asked, though the question sounded weak even to my own ears. He tilted his head. "You already know it is. Tonight, they'll try again. Listen closely when the water covers your ears. You'll hear the truth." For the rest of the session, he barely spoke, just watching me with eyes too steady for a man supposedly unraveling. When the timer chimed, I expected him to leave quietly. Instead, as he reached the door, he whispered without turning back, "Don't fight the drowning. That's when they hold you down." The door clicked shut, leaving me alone with my notes, my dread, and the faintest sound of dripping water from somewhere inside the walls. That night, I tried to prepare. I left every light in the house on, as if illumination could keep the shadows at bay. I set glasses of water on the kitchen counter, convincing myself that if I woke to damp floors again, I'd have a rational explanation. Still, when I finally lay down, my body trembled with the anticipation of sleep. I fought it as long as I could. Read, paced, even played music softly through a speaker. But exhaustion won, and the pull of unconsciousness came like a tide. The dream wasted no time. The lake rose up around me, more violent than before, Waves crashed, black and heavy, slapping against my face as if eager to drag me under. The air stank of algae and rot, thick enough to choke. My chest constricted, and I realized I wasn't standing anymore. I was already sinking. Beneath the water, the faces were waiting. Dozens of them, pale and swollen, hair floating like weeds. But now I recognized them clearly. Each one bore some resemblance to me, slightly younger, slightly older, eyes hollow, but undeniably mine. My doppelgangers, drowned versions of myself, circling in silent accusation. And above them, rising slowly from the depths, was him, my patient. His skin glistened as though it had been soaked for centuries. His eyes glowed faintly, reflecting the surface light that didn't exist. He reached out a hand, and though I recoiled, my body obeyed some invisible command, drifting closer. "You've been here longer than you think," he said, his voice carrying perfectly through the liquid. "You just never remembered, but every time you wake, you leave a piece of yourself behind." I tried to speak, to protest, but bubbles escaped instead of words. Panic surged as my lungs screamed for air. He moved closer, pressing a finger to my chest. The moment he touched me, a vision erupted. My own bedroom, my own body lying in bed, but water gushed from my mouth like a broken fountain, flooding the sheets. My reflection in the vision's mirror stared back at me, not horrified, but smiling. I wrenched away, thrashing upward. The surface was impossibly far, receding the harder I swam. The drowned versions of me began to rise, clawing at my legs, my arms, their nails cold and sharp. Their mouths opened in unison, and this time I could hear them. "Stay with us." I screamed underwater, the sound tearing through me, and then air. I was in my bedroom again, bolting upright, coughing violently. My throat burned as if I'd truly inhaled water. I stumbled out of bed, clutching my chest, desperate for oxygen, but the nightmare hadn't stayed behind. Across the room, in the mirror above my dresser, my reflection didn't match me. While I stood hunched, gasping for air, the man in the mirror was calm, lips curved into a slow, knowing grin. And as I watched in paralyzed terror, a bead of water trickled from the corner of his mouth. I didn't sleep the rest of that night. I couldn't. Every time I blinked, I saw that smile in the mirror, water glistening at the corner of my reflection's mouth. By dawn, my eyes burned with fatigue, but my mind felt raw, overexposed, as though I had stared too long into the sun. At the hospital, I buried myself in routine. Notes, sharp reviews, quick consultations. Anything to convince myself I was still anchored in reality. But when I opened my office door for the first appointment, my patient was already sitting there. I froze. The session wasn't scheduled until the afternoon. I knew the door had been locked. Yet there he was, perched on the couch, hands folded neatly in his lap, as if he had always belonged. "You didn't drown," he said softly. I shut the door slowly, my throat dry. "How did you get in here?" He tilted his head. "You let me in, last night." My pulse spiked. I tried to steady my breathing, crossing to my chair with deliberate calm. "Tell me what you mean by that." He didn't answer at first. Instead, he studied me like a specimen under glass. Then, "The mirror. You saw yourself, didn't you?" The room felt colder. My skin prickled. "Yes." He smiled, not mocking, but almost paternal, as if he'd been waiting for me to admit it. "That wasn't your reflection. That was what's left of you in the lake. It watches, it waits, it smiles because it knows you'll be back." I gripped my pen too tightly, the plastic creaking. "Are you saying these dreams, these visions, they're real?" He leaned forward. His voice was calm, measured, terrifyingly certain. "You still think you're dreaming. But look at your hands, doctor. Look closely." Reluctantly, I did. At first they looked normal, though trembling. But then I saw it, the faintest sheen of moisture, tiny droplets clinging to the creases of my palms, as though I just pulled them from water. I hadn't washed them. I hadn't touched anything wet since I arrived. The pen slipped from my grip. My patient's eyes gleamed. You see? The lake is patient, but it is real. Every night you resist, it reaches further into your waking life. Soon, it won't matter if you're asleep or awake. I tried to speak, but the words dissolved in my throat. The air in the office was damp, heavy with the faint scent of mildew. My ears caught it, and the sound of dripping, soft but insistent, like a leaky faucet in a distant room. Do you hear it? He whispered, and I did. Louder now. Drip, drip. I looked toward the corner of the room and saw it. A small puddle spreading across the carpet, black as ink, though no pipe ran beneath that part of the floor. My patient rose to his feet, his voice gentle, almost consoling. The water has already found you. I sat frozen, unable to move, as he stepped past me and opened the office door. Before leaving, he turned back one last time. Tonight, doctor, he said, you'll learn what it really wants. Then he was gone. And in the silence that followed, the dripping didn't stop. It grew louder. The rest of the day unraveled like wet paper. I went through the motion sessions, notes, polite nods to colleagues, but nothing stuck. Every time I glanced at my hands, I expected to see water dripping from my fingers. Every time I turned a corner in the hospital, I swore I heard the faint slosh of waves trailing behind me. By evening, the weight of dread pressed on my chest like a stone. I sat in my car in the hospital parking lot for nearly an hour, unable to bring myself to start the engine. The thought of going home, of entering that bedroom again, felt unbearable. But where else could I go? The water, it seemed, no longer cared about walls or locks. Eventually, I drove. The house greeted me in silence. I flicked on every light, checked every faucet. Dry, normal, but the air carried a heaviness, the way the atmosphere thickens before a thunderstorm. I ate nothing. My stomach was a knot of nausea. At midnight, fatigue cornered me. I sat in the living room chair, fighting to keep my eyes open. But sleep is cunning. It waits until you're weakest. The lake welcomed me back with violence. No still surface this time. No gradual descent. I plunged straight into black water, tumbling downward, lungs instantly ablaze with pressure. Below me, the drowned versions of myself hovered, arms outstretched. Their mouths moved in eerie synchronization, bubbles streaming upward. I couldn't hear the words at first, but then clear as bells came the chant. Stay with us, stay with us. I kicked, desperate to rise, but something yanked me down. I looked and saw a hand gripping my ankle. His hand, my patient's. His eyes glowed faintly in the dark, wide and merciless. You don't fight the water, he hissed, voice rippling through the current. That's when it takes everything. I tried to shake him off, but the drowned copies of myself surged closer, clawing at my clothes, my skin, their nails leaving burning streaks across my arms. Their faces pressed against mine, cold lips brushing my cheeks, each whispering the same phrase. You've drowned before, you'll drown again. I thrashed upward, my chest screaming for air. For a moment, the surface gleamed above me, moonlight reflecting. But as I reached, it seemed to pull away, stretching farther, impossibly high, as if the lake itself enjoyed the chase. My patient's grip tightened, dragging me deeper. The truth is down here, he said, not up there. I screamed, a muffled roar of bubbles, and tore my leg free. With everything in me, I surged upward. My hands broke the surface air at last only to find it wasn't the sky above. It was the ceiling of my own bedroom. Water pressed against it, trapping me below, as though my house had sunk beneath the lake. My bed floated in the distance, sheets billowing like kelp, and sitting on it dry, calm was my reflection, the smiling one. He raised a finger to his lips, as if shushing me, and whispered with my own voice, "Stop pretending you don't belong here." I woke choking, sprawled on my living room floor, lungs seared with pain. My carpet was soaked through. The clock read 3:07 a.m. again. And from the hallway mirror, I could see him, my reflection, still smiling, though I wasn't. The next morning, I tried to appear normal. A fresh shirt, steady gait, a calm nod at the nurse's station. But in every reflective surface I passed glass doors, polished tiles, stainless steel equipment, I caught glimpses that weren't quite right. My reflection was always just a fraction slower, or smiling faintly when my own face was rigid. By mid-morning, one of my colleagues stopped me in the hall. "Rough night?" she asked, concern creasing her brow. I forced a tired smile. "Just paperwork." She hesitated, then lowered her voice. "You look like you've been underwater. Your eyes." I thanked her and walked away before she could elaborate. But the words stuck, needling into me. Did she see it too? When I entered my office, the smell of mildew hit like a fist. Dampness clung to the carpet. My first instinct was panic that the puddle had followed me here now. But as I scanned the floor, I saw nothing. Dry, normal, except the air itself carried that heavy, wet musk. My patient was already there, waiting, as though sessions no longer obeyed schedules. He didn't greet me this time. He just stared, his eyes unblinking. "You're thinning," he said. I sat heavily in my chair. "What do you mean?" "Every night you fight, the lake keeps more of you. Soon there won't be enough left for the waking world. People already notice, don't they? The way you look, the way you move. You're slipping. Anger sparked small but real. If this is your delusion, I won't be pulled into it." He tilted his head. "Delusion? Then tell me this. Why does your reflection smile when you don't?" My blood turned to ice. Before I could answer, he stood and walked to the corner of the room where the shadows pooled. "Do you hear them?" He whispered. At first, only silence, then faintly water dripping. Louder, faster. My skin prickled as I realized it wasn't in the building. It was in my head, a rhythm steady as a heartbeat. He closed his eyes. "They're calling you. Tonight, you won't just drown. You'll see why." I couldn't speak. My throat locked. Then, in a sudden motion, he picked up the small mirror I kept on the desk. He held it up between us. My reflection grinned, wide, teeth too sharp, too many. Water seeped down its chin, pooling at the bottom edge of the glass. The patient's voice was almost reverent. "There you are." I shoved the mirror away, sending it clattering to the floor, shattering into pieces. The sound jolted me back to myself. When I looked up, the patient was gone. The door was still closed. I sat shaking, fragments of glass around my feet, each shard reflecting dozens of tiny smiling versions of me. By the time I left the hospital that night, I was unraveling. My colleagues' polite smiles seemed heavier, their questions more pointed. "Are you getting enough rest? You seem distracted. You look pale." I brushed them off with mechanical answers, but inside, I felt the truth. I was no longer entirely here. Driving home, the streetlights looked warped, shimmering as if submerged underwater. I gripped the steering wheel tighter, terrified I might drift off and wake up choking on lake water. At the house, I locked every door, checked every window. Then I sat in the living room chair, facing the hallway mirror. For an hour, my reflection just stared back, lifeless. Then, at 2 a.m., it began to move on its own. The smile came first, slow, deliberate. Then the head tilt, an exact echo of my patient's. My own eyes watched me with something that wasn't mine. I whispered, "What do you want from me?" The reflection's lips moved, but no sound emerged. Instead, I heard it behind me, wet, bubbling laughter. I spun around. Nothing. But when I turned back, the mirror was no longer showing my living room. It was showing the lake. Black waves crashing silently, faces floating just beneath the surface. And then, without warning, the room itself dissolved. Cold slammed into me. I was under again. The transition had been instant, no dream haze, no slow fade. One moment I was in my chair, the next I was drowning. The lake had found a way to bypass sleep entirely. I thrashed, panic consuming me. The drowned copies closed in, their pale hands tangling in my hair, their lips brushing my ears as they whispered fragments of my own thoughts back at me. Regrets, fears, secrets no one knew. Through the dark, I saw him, my patient. But now his body was monstrous, loaded and gray, the water having claimed him fully. His jaw distended, teeth jagged like broken glass. He swam toward me with unnatural speed, his eyes glowing brighter than ever. "This is where you belong," he gurgled. "Not in the waking world. Here, with yourself." I screamed, kicking, clawing upward, but the surface was gone. Only water, stretching forever. The lake had closed above me like a coffin. The drowned versions of me wrapped their arms around my chest, pulling me tighter, whispering with one voice, "Stay with us?" Just before I blacked out, I felt something slip from my chest. Not a breath, something deeper. A thread of warmth, of identity, torn away. Then blackness. I woke sprawled on my living room floor again, coughing violently. My lungs burned with the raw ache of water. The carpet beneath me was drenched. But worse was the mirror. In it, my reflection was gone. Only darkness rippled there, the surface of the lake waiting. And as I crawled backward, trembling, a wet hand pressed against the inside of the glass. I didn't sleep. I couldn't. I spent the entire night sitting on the floor across from the mirror, watching the hand press against the inside of the glass. It didn't move at first, just rested there, palms splayed flat, water dripping down in steady rivulets. Then, slowly, the fingers began to curl, as though testing the barrier's strength. Every instinct told me to run, to smash the mirror, to do something. But I was paralyzed, pinned by a primal terror I couldn't reason through. What if breaking it only gave the thing more ways to crawl through? Hours bled into dawn. The hand eventually receded, melting back into the rippling dark surface. For a brief, fragile moment, I thought I was safe. But when I leaned closer, I saw my own reflection return, not whole, not normal. The skin around its eyes was pale and waterlogged, and its smile was wider than mine could ever stretch. I didn't go to work. I couldn't face anyone. Instead, I boarded up the mirror with a blanket, duct tape, anything I could find. But I knew it wasn't enough. It wasn't the glass that mattered. It was what lived beyond it. By evening, exhaustion dragged me down again. I tried everything to resist, coffee, pacing, even pain. But at some point, my body betrayed me. My eyes closed, and the lake claimed me instantly. I plunged into black water, deeper than ever. This time, there was no surface at all, no promise of escape, just endless dark pressing in from every direction. I felt weightless, suspended in liquid night. Shapes emerged, not dozens now, but hundreds. All of them me. Younger, older, distorted, mouths agape. They swirled around me in a slow, hypnotic spiral. From within their circle, my patient emerged no longer human at all. His body was swollen, skin splitting, and from his chest spilled a glow like phosphorescent algae. His jaw unhinged too wide, a cavernous void. "The mirror is thinning," he said, his voice reverberating through the water. It will not hold forever. And when it breaks, doctor, the lake will not just take you. It will pour into your world. I shook my head violently, bubbles exploding from my mouth. No, no. But the drowned versions of myself pressed closer, their voices hissing inside my skull. You cannot stop what you are already part of. I thrashed, screaming wordless defiance, and for a moment, I thought I felt something give way above me, light piercing the black. But then I realized it wasn't light. It was my living room ceiling, cracking like ice. Water poured through the cracks. My bookshelves collapsed. The lamp sparked and fizzed out. The lake wasn't just in me anymore. It was in my home. I woke sitting upright in the same chair, gasping, water dripping from my hair onto the floor. The blanket I had taped over the mirror was soaked through, clinging to the glass. Behind it, I could see faint ripples. And then another hand pressed against the inside. Not one this time, dozens. The blanket sagged against the mirror, dripping, bulging outward with the pressure of unseen bodies. Every few seconds, another wet handprint pressed against the fabric, fingers stretching, claws of liquid shadow clawing for release. I backed away, breath coming in sharp bursts. My rational mind screamed for action. Call someone, leave the house, smash the mirror. But every instinct whispered a darker truth. There was nowhere to run. The lake was no longer confined to dreams. It was bleeding into my world, one drop at a time. The dripping grew into a steady trickle. Then, with a sharp tearing sound, the blanket peeled free from the glass and fell to the floor, heavy with water. The mirror pulsed like the surface of a pond, rippling, alive. And then the first hand broke through. It wasn't solid, not entirely. Water streamed from it in endless rivulets, fingers half transparent, flesh both real and fluid. But when it touched the floorboards, the wood hissed, swelling, buckling under the moisture. Another hand followed, then another, dozens, each pulling, clawing, forcing space for what waited beyond. I screamed, grabbed the closest object, a chair, and hurled it into the glass. The mirror shuddered, spider-webbed with cracks, but didn't break. Instead, the cracks bled water, streaming down in thick rivulets that smelled of rot. The room darkened. The overhead light flickered, then sputtered out, leaving only the phosphorescent glow leaking from the mirror. Shapes pressed against the rippling surface. Faces, my faces. Pale, drowned versions of me, grinning in perfect unison. Stay with us, they whispered, not from the mirror, not from the lake, but from inside my skull. The chorus was deafening, 1,000 echoes clawing at the walls of my mind. Then he appeared. My patient. His monstrous body loomed behind the glass, swollen and split, eyes blazing with unnatural light. He pressed both hands against the mirror, and the glass bowed outward as if it were made of thin ice. You thought you could keep us apart, he thundered, his voice vibrating through the floor. But the lake does not ask. It takes. With a final convulsion, the mirror burst. Not shattered open. A flood poured into the room, black water crashing against my legs, dragging me toward the glassy void. I stumbled, choking, grabbing at the doorframe, the furniture, anything solid, but the current was relentless. The drowned versions of myself surged through, crawling, dragging, their mouths opening wide. My own eyes stared back at me from every angle, their voices shrieking. Tonight, you join us forever. I clung to the splintering desk, chest heaving as the water rose higher, pulling me closer to the breach. And through the chaos, I realized with a sickening certainty, if I didn't stop this now, the lake wouldn't just take me. It would spill into the world beyond my house, through every mirror, every reflection, every still surface of water. This wasn't just my nightmare anymore. It was a flood waiting to be unleashed. The water rose to my chest, icy, crushing. Every piece of furniture in the room lifted and twisted in the current, crashing against the walls. The mirror yawned wide like a doorway now, endless blackness behind it, pulsing with the glow of my patient's monstrous form. My drowned reflections clambered closer, clawing at my arms and legs. Each touch stole warmth, each grip pulling me closer to the void. Their whispers were no longer soft, they were shrieks, battering my skull until I thought my mind would split. "Stay with us? Stay with us? Stay with us?" I screamed, thrashing, but their numbers were endless. For a moment, I thought it was over, that the lake had finally won. But then, through the cacophony, I remembered his words. Don't fight the drowning. That's when they hold you down. My lungs burned. My body trembled. And in that moment, I did the only thing left. I stopped fighting. I let the water take me. The hands loosened their grip in shock, as though confused. My reflections hesitated, their smiles faltering. I felt myself sinking, deeper into the flood, into the mirror's gaping maw. The patient's monstrous figure loomed above me, ready to devour. But as I gave myself over, I realized something. The lake only had power because I resisted. It thrived on my fear, my struggle, and in surrender, I found a strange clarity. The drowned versions of me weren't strangers. They were possibilities, fragments of myself I had abandoned. Regrets, failures, sins. They circled me because I had never faced them. And now, in the lake's suffocating dark, I finally did. I opened my mouth, inhaling water willingly. It was agony burning, tearing, but then something shifted. The faces faded. The hands dissolved. The patient's monstrous body cracked, fissures splitting his bloated skin until he collapsed into nothing but ripples. And then silence. I gasped awake on my bedroom floor, the air sharp and dry. The carpet was clean. The mirror stood whole, unbroken. No water, no hands, only my reflection staring back. But my reflection didn't smile. For the first time, it looked exactly like me, exhausted, hollow-eyed, but mine. I sat there until dawn, trembling, waiting for the dripping to return. It never did. At the hospital later that day, I asked about the patient. The receptionist frowned. "Patient?" she repeated. She checked the files. "There's no one by that name on your schedule." There never was. My blood ran cold. That night, I covered every mirror in my house. Yet sometimes, in the silence before sleep, I swear I still hear faint ripples beneath the floorboards. And when I dream, the lake waits. Always still, but now the voices don't say stay with us. They whisper something far worse. "We'll come to you."